The desert wind carried whispers of death and judgment as Clara Whitmore stood before her husband's grave, watching the last rays of sunlight bleed across the Arizona sky. No tears came. She had none left to give. 3 days had passed since they'd lowered Samuel into the ground. 3 days since the whispers began. Black Widow. They called her when they thought she couldn't hear. Sometimes they didn't bother waiting. Clara's fingers tightened around the worn leather of her riding gloves. The headstone was simple, befitting a deputy sheriff of modest means, Samuel Whitmore. It read, 1854 to 1886, devoted servant of justice. The irony tasted bitter as desert alkali. Behind her, she heard approaching footsteps crunching on the dried earth. Without turning, she knew it would be Margaret Whitmore, Samuel's sister, come to deliver another dose of venom. "You've got some nerve showing your face here." Margaret's voice cut through the evening air like a rusty blade. "The whole town knows what you did." Clara turned slowly, meeting her sister-in-law's accusing glare. Margaret stood flanked by 2 of Samuel's cousins, their faces twisted with the same hatred that had poisoned every interaction since that night. "I've done nothing but bury my husband," Clara said quietly. "Your husband?" Margaret spat. "You mean the man you killed?" The words hung in the air between them. Clara had heard the accusations whispered in the general store, murmured after church service, spoken boldly in the saloon. The night Samuel died, neighbors had heard shouting. They'd seen Clara with bruises on her arms. They'd drawn their own conclusions, each more damning than the last. "The doctor said his heart gave out," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "After you poisoned him, no doubt, or perhaps you used one of those Indian remedies you're always mixing." Margaret stepped closer, her breath hot with righteousness. "We all heard the fighting. We all saw how you looked at him, like you were planning something." Clara wanted to tell them the truth. She wanted to scream that Samuel's heart had given out while he held her against the kitchen wall, his hands around her throat, promising to kill her if she ever tried to leave. She wanted to show them the bruises hidden beneath her high collar, the scars that would never fade. But she knew they wouldn't believe her. Samuel had been their golden boy, the upstanding lawman who kept their town safe. She was just the strange woman he'd brought back from Kansas City, the one who knew too much about herbs and healing, who read books and spoke her mind. "You have until sunrise to leave this town," Margaret continued. "The house belongs to the family now. Take whatever you can carry and go." "That house was my home for 5 years." Clara protested. "Was," Margaret emphasized. "Sheriff Morrison says there's not enough evidence to arrest you, but that doesn't mean you're welcome here. Leave tonight, or we'll make sure you leave in a pine box next to Samuel." The cousins shifted, hands moving to rest on their gun belts. The message was clear. Clara held her chin high as she walked past them, her boots clicking against the hard-packed earth of the cemetery path. The town of perdition spread before her in the dying light, a collection of wooden buildings and broken dreams clinging to life in the desert. She'd tried to make a life here, tried to be the wife they expected. But some spirits weren't meant to be caged. The Whitmore house sat on the respectable side of town, a modest 2-story building with lace curtains Clara had sewn herself. She climbed the front steps one last time, aware of the eyes watching from behind neighboring windows. Inside, the house felt like a tomb. Samuel's presence lingered in every corner, his pipe on the mantel, his badge on the entry table, the dent in the wall where he'd thrown a bottle the week before he died. Clara moved quickly, gathering only essentials, a change of clothes, her medical supplies, the small pistol Samuel had given her years ago when he still pretended to care about her safety. Her hands paused over their wedding photograph. She'd been so young, so hopeful. She left it on the dresser, in the bottom drawer of her wardrobe, wrapped in oilcloth. She found her savings, $43 she'd hidden away, penny by penny, planning for an escape that came too late. She added Samuel's pocket watch and the gold ring he'd worn. He wouldn't need them where he'd gone. A sound from downstairs made her freeze. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate. She reached for the pistol, checked the chambers, 5 bullets. She hoped she wouldn't need them. Mrs. Whitmore. The voice belonged to Tom Morrison, the new sheriff. "I know you're up there." Clara descended the stairs slowly, keeping the pistol hidden in the folds of her skirt. Morrison stood in her parlor, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable. He was younger than Samuel had been, with kind eyes that hadn't yet been hardened by the job. "Margaret sent you?" Clara asked. "No, ma'am. I came on my own." He glanced around the room, taking in the signs of a life interrupted. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry for your loss, and for how folks are treating you, but not sorry enough to stand up to them." Morrison's jaw tightened. "I've got no evidence of any wrongdoing, but this town, they've made up their minds. It might be best if you moved on. For your own safety." "You mean it might be best for you?" Clara said. "Easier to keep the peace without the Black Widow stirring up trouble." "That's not fair." "Nothing about this is fair, Sheriff." Clara moved to the window, watching the last of the sunset paint the desert red as blood. "But I'll go. Not because they want me to, but because there's nothing left for me here." Morrison shifted his weight. "Where will you go? Does it matter?" He pulled something from his vest pocket, a small leather pouch. "Samuel had some money in the jail safe, his pay for the month, by rights. It belongs to you." Clara took the pouch, surprised by its weight. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I knew Samuel, really knew him." Morrison's eyes held understanding. "And because I've seen bruises like yours before, on my own mother. Whatever happened that night, I reckon you've suffered enough." He left without another word, and Clara stood alone in the gathering darkness. She had until sunrise, but she wouldn't wait that long. The desert called to her, vast and unforgiving, but honest in its dangers, not like the civilized cruelty of perdition. She dressed in her riding clothes, split skirt, sturdy boots, a man's shirt that had belonged to Samuel. The irony wasn't lost on her. She packed her saddlebags with methodical precision. Medical supplies, ammunition, dried food, 2 canteens of water, everything else she left behind. Let Margaret have it all. The stable boy was asleep when she arrived, and Clara saddled her mare in silence. Sage was a good horse, steady and sure-footed, bought with Clara's own money before Samuel decided such independence was unseemly. At least she'd have one friend on the journey ahead. As she led Sage from the stable, a figure stepped from the shadows. Clara's hand went to her pistol, but relaxed when she recognized Mary Chen, the Chinese laundress who lived on the wrong side of the tracks. "Mrs. Clara," Mary said softly, pressing a small bundle into Clara's hands. "Food for journey, and this." She produced a piece of paper covered in neat handwriting. "Map to old mission, south into desert, abandoned, but has water. You stay there, rest, then keep going to Mexico, maybe." Clara's throat tightened. In 5 years, Mary was one of the few who'd shown her genuine kindness. "Why help me? Because I know what it like to be outsider, to have no one believe your truth." Mary glanced toward town. "And because I do laundry, I see blood on sheriff's shirts. Always blood. Always bruises on you. I know who real killer is." The 2 women embraced briefly. Then Mary disappeared back into the shadows. Clara mounted Sage and turned the horse toward the edge of town, toward the vast darkness of the desert. As they passed the last building, she heard the saloon piano playing a mournful tune, saw the yellow light spilling from windows where people were already crafting the legend of the Black Widow. Let them talk, Clara thought. Let them spin their tales of the evil woman who murdered their sainted deputy. The truth had died with Samuel, and she was tired of trying to resurrect it. The desert opened before her like a door to another world. The moon was rising, casting silver light across the endless expanse of sand and stone. Saguaro cacti stood like silent sentinels, their arms raised in blessing or warning. The night sounds began. Coyotes calling in the distance, the rustle of creatures in the brush, the whisper of wind through rocky canyons. Clara had no clear destination, only Mary's roughly drawn map and a desperate need to put distance between herself and the suffocating judgment of perdition. South, toward Mexico, toward a place where no one knew her name or her sins, real or imagined. As Sage picked her way carefully down the trail, Clara allowed herself one glance back. The lights of perdition twinkled like fallen stars, already growing distant. Somewhere among them was the house where she'd spent 5 years trying to be someone she wasn't. The grave of a man who'd promised to love and protect her. The people who'd rather believe in a monster than acknowledge their hero's failings. "No more," Clara whispered to the night. "No more pretending, no more cages." The desert stretched endlessly ahead, beautiful and terrible in its honesty. It would not judge her or whisper behind her back. It would simply test her will to survive. And that was a challenge Clara understood. She urged Sage forward into the darkness, into the unknown, into a freedom that tasted like dust and danger and hope. Behind them, perdition slept, content in its certainty. They would wake to find the Black Widow gone, and the legend would grow with each telling. But Clara Whitmore, the woman, not the myth, rode into the desert night, carrying nothing but scars and determination, searching for a place where she could finally breathe free. The fever dreams came in waves, pulling Clara between darkness and a strange, filtered light. She felt strong hands lifting her, heard the creak of leather and the steady rhythm of a horse's gait. Water touched her lips, cool, precious, and she drank instinctively, though her mind couldn't grasp where she was or who held the canteen. When consciousness finally returned, she found herself lying on a narrow cot in a dim room. Adobe walls, rough-hewn beams overhead, a single window showing a rectangle of desert sky. The air smelled of sage smoke and something medicinal herbs she recognized but couldn't name in her foggy state. Clara tried to sit up, gasping as pain shot through her leg. Memory crashed back. Sage stepping in a prairie dog hole, the sickening snap of bone. Her own scream cut short as she hit the ground. Then the rattlesnake, disturbed by her fall, striking before she could move away. The burning spread of venom. The desperate attempt to treat herself before darkness claimed her. "Easy." The voice came from the shadows near the door. A man stepped into the light, tall, lean, weathered by sun and wind. He wore simple clothes, duck canvas pants and a faded blue shirt, but the gun belt around his waist was well maintained. Speaking of someone who understood survival. A red bandana hung loose around his neck, and his face was a study in contrasts. Mexican heritage in the angle of his cheekbones. Something else in the gray-green of his eyes. "Where am I?" Clara's voice came out as a croak. "My place, such as it is." He moved to a table, pouring water from a clay pitcher. "Found you 3 days ago, out by Devil's Canyon. Your horse was standing guard. Wouldn't let me near it first. Smart animal." "Sage, is she—" "Broken leg. Had to put her down." His voice held genuine regret. "I'm sorry. I know what it means to lose a good horse out here." Clara closed her eyes, adding another loss to her growing tally. When she opened them, the man was holding out a cup of water. She took it with trembling hands, noting the careful distance he maintained. "I'm Luke Cordero," he said. "And before you worry, you're safe. I've got no interest in, well, whatever sent you running into the desert alone." "What makes you think I was running?" A slight smile touched his weathered features. "Nobody rides into Devil's Canyon by choice, especially not a woman with packed saddlebags and the look of someone leaving ghosts behind." Clara sipped the water, studying him over the rim. There was something guarded in his stance, a wariness that matched her own. "Clara," she said finally. "Clara?" She hesitated, then decided her married name could die with her old life. "Just Clara." "Fair enough." Luke moved to the window, gazing out at the harsh landscape. "The snakebite's been treated, caught it in time, though you'll be weak for a while. Your supplies are there." He gestured to her saddlebags in the corner. "Nothing's been touched except your medical kit. Needed it to help you." "You know medicine?" "Enough to get by. My mother was a curandera." At Clara's questioning look, he added, "A healer. She taught me some things before. He didn't finish. Days passed in a careful dance of distance. Clara healed slowly, fighting not just the snakebite's aftermath, but exhaustion that ran bone deep. Luke provided necessities: food, water, clean bandages, but maintained a careful boundary. He slept outside, only entering the small adobe house to check her condition or bring supplies. She learned the rhythm of his days through observation: morning hunts for rabbit or quail, afternoon repairs to the house or his equipment, evenings by the fire outside, visible through her window, where he'd sit alone with coffee and thoughts she couldn't read. On the fourth day, Clara insisted on leaving the bed. She limped to the doorway. Seeing Luke set up properly for the first time, the adobe house was spare but clean, built with skill against a natural rock formation that provided shelter from the worst of the desert wind. A lean-to served as a stable for his horse. A well-organized outdoor kitchen showed someone who'd made peace with a solitary living. "You've been here a while," she observed, lowering herself carefully onto a wooden bench. Luke looked up from the bridle he was repairing. 6 years, more or less. That's a long time to be alone. Alone is safer. He tested a strap, frowning at its weakness. For everyone. Clara recognized the weight in those words. It matched the heaviness she carried. "Are you hiding from the law?" His hand stilled. Would it matter if I was? She considered this, watching a hawk circle in the thermals above. "I suppose that depends on what you did. What I did, or what they say I did. There's a difference?" "Always is." Luke set the bridle aside, his movements deliberate. "You running from the law? Clara with no last name. From judgment. From a town that decided I was guilty because it was easier than seeing one of their own as he really was." Luke studied her for a long moment. "Your husband?" She didn't answer, but something in her silence must have confirmed it. He nodded slowly, understanding passing between them without need for details. As her strength returned, Clara began helping with small tasks, preparing meals, mending clothes, organizing the medical supplies she'd brought. Luke watched her work with herbs, noting her knowledge. "You really are a healer," he said one evening as she prepared a poultice for her still tender leg. "I wanted to be a doctor once." Clara's hands moved with practiced efficiency. "Back in Kansas City, before I met Samuel, my father was a physician. He taught me until propriety demanded I stop learning and start looking for a husband." Samuel. That was his name? Deputy Sheriff Samuel Whitmore, pillar of the community, defender of justice. Bitterness crept into her voice. Everyone loved him, respected him, never wondered why his wife wore long sleeves in summer or flinched when he moved too quickly. Luke was quiet for a moment. "He's dead now?" Heart gave out during one of his episodes. The town decided I must have poisoned him. After all, what other explanation could there be for such a good man's sudden death? The truth? Maybe. Clara laughed, a sound without humor. The truth doesn't matter when the lie is more comfortable. That night, Luke showed her something he'd never shared with another soul. Behind the house, following a narrow path through the rocks, was a small canyon with a seasonal stream. Even now, in the dry season, a small pool remained, fed by an underground spring. "It's beautiful," Clara breathed, taking in the unexpected oasis. Cottonwoods provided shade, their leaves whispering secrets to the desert wind. "My brother and I found it years ago, when we were running freight through here." Luke's voice carried old pain. "After everything went bad, I remembered this place. Seemed like somewhere a man could disappear. Your brother, dead. Fever took him 2 winters ago." Luke picked up a stone, skipping it across the small pool. He was the only one who knew the truth about what happened in Tucson. Only one who believed me. Clara waited, sensing the story needed to emerge on its own time. "There was a man named Harrison, big rancher, owned half the valley. His son got drunk. Decided he wanted the girl I was courting. Maria was her name. When she refused him, he tried to force her. I stopped him." Luke's jaw tightened. Harrison boy pulled a knife. It was self-defense, but his daddy owned the sheriff, the judge, half the town. They said I murdered him in cold blood, trying to rob him. But surely there were witnesses. Mexican witnesses. A Mexican girl's word against the Harrison family? Luke shook his head. I ran. Been running ever since. Maria. She took her own life a month later. Couldn't live with what happened. They stood in silence. Two souls marked by injustice, finding unexpected kinship in their shared exile. As the days stretched into a second week, the careful boundaries between them began to shift. Small touches as Clara changed Luke's bandage from an old wound. Longer conversations by the evening fire. A growing awareness that made the small house feel smaller. One night, as Luke returned from checking his trap lines, Clara met him at the door. The moon was full, casting everything in silver and shadow. She'd let her hair down, and it fell around her shoulders like dark silk. You're afraid of me, she said. It wasn't a question. Luke set down his rifle carefully. Maybe. Why? Because you're dangerous. He met her gaze directly. Not in the way they said back in your town, but dangerous all the same. Clara stepped closer, close enough to see the pulse beating in his throat. Dangerous how? The kind that makes a man forget why he chose to be alone. The kind that makes him think about things he can't have. Can't or won't. The space between them hummed with tension. Luke's hand moved slightly, as if to touch her face, then dropped. What do you want from me, Clara? She considered the question. This man who'd saved her life and asked for nothing, who understood loss and judgment, who looked at her and saw neither victim nor villain, but simply another wounded soul. I want to know, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. If you're afraid of me, or if you want me. The question hung in the desert air like a challenge, like a prayer. Luke stood frozen, torn between advance and retreat, between the safety of solitude and the terrifying possibility of connection. Instead of answering, he turned and walked out into the night, leaving Clara alone with the pounding of her heart and the weight of words that couldn't be taken back. She watched his silhouette disappear into the darkness, wondered if she'd pushed too hard, asked for too much from someone as broken as herself. But morning would come, as it always did in the desert, and with it, the need to decide whether two damaged souls could find healing in each other, or if they were destined to remain alone, nursing wounds that would never fully heal. The morning after her question hung between them like a blade. Clara found Luke already at work, repairing a section of the corral fence. He didn't look up as she approached, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the careful control in each hammer strike. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have. Nothing to apologize for. His voice was neutral, too neutral. Coffee's on the fire. And so they fell into a brittle politeness, each careful not to breach the walls that had sprung up overnight. But the desert has a way of stripping pretense, and their careful dance couldn't last. 3 days later, Clara was gathering herbs along the canyon when she heard Luke's horse returning at a gallop. Too fast, too urgent. She ran back to find him sliding from the saddle, blood seeping through his shirt. What happened? She was already moving, her healer's instincts overriding any awkwardness. Ran into some men near Skeleton Ridge. They recognized me. Luke winced as she helped him inside. Got away, but one of them winged me. Clara cut away his shirt, revealing a bullet graze along his ribs, painful but not life-threatening. As she cleaned the wound, Luke's breathing was harsh, controlled. This is what I am, he said through gritted teeth. A wanted man, always running, always looking over my shoulder. You understand now why I keep my distance. Hold still, Clara commanded, threading a needle. This is going to hurt. She worked in silence, stitching the wound with steady hands. When she finished, she sat back, meeting his eyes. You think I care that you're wanted, after what I've been through? It's different. I actually killed a man. In self-defense, protecting someone who couldn't protect herself. Clara began wrapping a bandage around his ribs. Samuel died while trying to strangle me. The only difference is you had witnesses who wouldn't speak for you. I had a town who wouldn't believe me. Luke caught her wrist as she tied off the bandage. "Clara." "No." She pulled away. "You don't get to push me away because you think it's noble. We're both broken. We're both running. At least we could be honest about it." That night, unable to sleep, Clara found Luke by the dying fire. He'd pulled a chair outside, watching the stars despite the pain it must have caused his wound. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked without turning. She sat on the ground near his chair, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Tell me about her." "Maria." Luke was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "She was the daughter of our freight company's cook. Tiny thing, but fierce. Could make a grown man back down with just a look." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "She wanted to be a teacher. Used to practice on the younger kids in the camp, teaching them letters in the dirt. You loved her. I was going to marry her. Had it all planned. Build a little house. Start a business. Have children who could be proud of their name." His voice went flat. "Harrison's boy took all that away. Even if I'd stayed, faced trial, she was ruined in everyone's eyes. Damaged goods." Clara stood, moving to face him. "Is that what you think I am? Damaged goods?" "No." The word came quick, emphatic. "God, no." "Then what?" Luke looked up at her, his face half in shadow. "You're dangerous because you make me want things again, make me think about tomorrow instead of just surviving today. Is that so terrible? It is when tomorrow might not come, when any day could bring a bullet or a rope." Clara knelt beside his chair, careful not to jar his injury. "Samuel promised me forever, promised me safety and love and respectability. Look how that ended." She took his hand, feeling the calluses, the strength. "I'm not asking for promises, Luke. I'm asking for truth, for whatever time we have." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "You deserve better than a man with a price on his head. And you deserve better than a woman they call Black Widow. But here we are." The fire crackled, sending sparks into the star-filled sky. Luke's other hand came up to touch her face, fingers ghosting along her cheek as if she might disappear. "Clara?" Her name was a prayer, a warning. She turned her face into his palm, pressing a kiss there. "I'm not afraid of your past. Don't be afraid of what's between us." He drew her up, and she settled carefully on the edge of his chair, mindful of his wound. For a long moment they simply looked at each other, reading histories of pain and possibility in the flickering light. The kiss, when it came, was nothing like the bruising possession she'd known with Samuel. Luke's lips were gentle, questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. Instead, she leaned in, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat race beneath her palm. When they parted, both breathing unsteadily, Luke rested his forehead against hers. "This is madness." "Maybe," Clara smiled, the first real smile she'd felt in months. "But it's our madness." They sat together watching the fire die to embers. Clara curled carefully against Luke's uninjured side. Neither spoke of tomorrow or the dangers that waited beyond their hidden canyon. For now, this moment of connection was enough. In the days that followed, they found a new rhythm. The careful distance dissolved, replaced by small intimacies, a touch in passing, shared smiles, conversations that ran deep into the night. Luke told her about growing up on the border, son of an Irish father who'd drunk himself to death and a Mexican mother who'd held the family together through sheer will. Clara shared memories of her father's medical practice, the satisfaction of healing, the dreams that died when she married Samuel. "Why did you marry him?" Luke asked one evening as they sat by the spring, feet cooling in the water. Clara considered the question. "He was handsome, charming. My father had just died, and I was alone, trying to run his practice in a world that didn't believe women could be doctors. Samuel offered security, respectability, a chance to use my skills as a doctor's wife, at least." She laughed bitterly. "I was so naive, thought the flashes of temper were just passion, thought his jealousy meant he loved me." "When did it change?" "Our wedding night." The words came quiet. He wanted complete submission. When I tried to explain that I needed gentleness, time, he said a wife's wishes didn't matter. That was the first time he hurt me. Luke's hand found hers under the water. I'm sorry. I spent 5 years apologizing for bruises, making excuses, thinking if I could just be better, quieter, more obedient, he'd become the man I thought I married. Clara squeezed his fingers. The night he died, he found letters I'd been writing to a cousin in California, asking about opportunities there. He went into a rage, said he'd kill me before he let me leave, make it look like an accident. But his heart gave out. While his hands were around my throat, I suppose God has a sense of irony. She turned to face Luke fully. I won't pretend to mourn him. Does that make me a monster? Makes you honest? Luke lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. And brave? That night, a storm rolled in from the south, unusual for the season. Lightning split the sky while thunder shook the adobe walls. Clara lay on her cot, listening to the rain pound the roof. When her door opened, Luke stood silhouetted in the doorway, shirtless, bandages pale against his skin. Roof's leaking in the main room. Mind if I... He gestured to the floor beside her cot. Don't be ridiculous. Clara moved to the far side of the narrow bed. There's room. He hesitated, and she could see the war in his face between propriety and practicality. Another crack of thunder decided him. He eased onto the bed, careful to stay atop the blankets while she lay beneath. They lay rigid as boards, hyper-aware of each other's breathing, the scant inches between them. Then Clara laughed, soft and unexpected. What? Us, acting like schoolchildren when we've both been married, when we've both known. She turned to face him. I'm not made of glass. Luke. His hand found her face in the darkness, thumb tracing her cheekbone. No, you're made of steel, but even steel can break if handled wrong. I won't break. She covered his hand with hers. Not with you. The storm raged outside, but in the small room, they found shelter in each other. Luke's kisses were reverent, treating her body like something precious rather than owned. Clara rediscovered gentleness, passion without pain, the sweetness of being desired rather than possessed. When the storm passed, they lay entwined, Clara's head on Luke's chest, careful of his healing wound. His fingers combed through her hair, and she felt his chest rise with a deep sigh. What happens now? He asked. Clara lifted up to look at him, seeing her own fears reflected there. I don't know, but whatever comes, we face it together. Together. He tested the word like a foreign language. Been alone so long, I'm not sure I remember how. Then we'll learn. She settled back against him. We've got time. But even as she said it, Clara knew time was the one thing they couldn't count on. Somewhere beyond their canyon, the world waited with its judgments and justice, its prices on their heads and brands on their hearts. The desert had given them shelter, but it couldn't hide them forever. For now, though, in this moment between storm and sunrise, they had each other. Two damaged souls finding healing in shared touches and whispered truths. It would have to be enough. The shovel bit into the hard earth with a sound that made Clara's blood run cold. She'd come around the back of the adobe house looking for Luke, planning to show him the new medicinal plants she'd found near the spring. Instead, she found him digging in the shade of a large boulder, his movements methodical, practiced. A grave. He was digging a grave. Clara's hand went to the pistol at her hip. She'd taken to wearing it since Luke had warned her about the men who'd spotted him. Her mind raced through possibilities, each darker than the last. Had someone come while she was away? Was he planning something terrible? Luke. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. He straightened slowly, wiping sweat from his brow. When he turned, she saw not guilt, but a deep, old sorrow in his eyes. Clara, I didn't hear you come back. What are you doing? She kept her hand near the gun, though something in his expression made her doubt her first fears. Luke set the shovel aside, his movements heavy. Today's the date. 2 years since Thomas died. He gestured to the half-dug hole. I buried him out here, but the markers I left got washed away in last year's floods. Been trying to find the exact spot again. The tension drained from Clara's shoulders. Your brother. My fault he's dead. Luke sat on a nearby rock, suddenly looking older than his years. If I hadn't brought him here, if I'd faced what happened in Tucson instead of running— Stop. Clara moved to sit beside him. Tell me about Thomas. Luke was quiet for a long moment. Then, he was 3 years younger, always following me around, even when we were kids. When everything went bad in Tucson, I told him to stay away, make his own life, but he wouldn't listen. Said family sticks together. He sounds loyal to a fault. Luke picked up a handful of sand, letting it run through his fingers. The fever came on sudden. One day he was fine, helping me repair the roof. Next day he could barely stand. I tried everything, all the remedies our mother taught us, even rode 2 days to find a doctor. But by the time I got back— Clara took his hand, feeling the tremors there. It wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? He'd have been safe in town, with proper doctors, medicine. Instead, he died out here because he wouldn't abandon his wanted brother. They sat in silence, the desert heat shimmering around them. Finally, Clara stood, picking up the shovel. Show me where you think he is. We'll find him together. It took hours of careful digging, following the contours of the land and Luke's memory. When they finally found the wrapped remains, Luke's composure cracked. Clara held him as he grieved afresh. This strong man who'd carried his guilt alone for so long. They reburied Thomas properly, marking the grave with stones arranged in a cross. Luke spoke a few words in Spanish, a prayer his mother had taught him. Clara added her own silent thoughts for the brother who'd chosen love over safety. That night, emotionally drained, they sat by their small fire in unusual silence. The day's revelations had shifted something between them, exposed new depths of pain and connection. You could have left when you found me digging, Luke said eventually. Could have thought the worst and run. The thought crossed my mind. Clara admitted. For a moment, I wondered if you were the killer they said you were. But you stayed. I stayed. She met his eyes across the fire. Just like Thomas stayed. Don't compare yourself to him. He was family. He had obligations. And what are we, Luke? The question hung between them like smoke. What is this between us if not a kind of family? Chosen, maybe, instead of blood, but still. Luke stood abruptly, pacing to the edge of the firelight. This is exactly why you should go. I'm poison. Clara, everyone who gets close to me ends up dead or ruined. That's not, isn't it? He whirled to face her. Maria, dead. Thomas, dead. And you're a good woman who deserves a real life, not hiding in the desert with a fugitive. Clara rose, anger flashing in her eyes. Don't you dare. What? Don't you dare tell me what I deserve. Don't make my choices for me. She stalked toward him. You think you're protecting me by pushing me away. You think I'm some fragile flower who doesn't understand the risks. I think you're a woman who's been hurt enough. The slap cracked across his face, surprising them both. Clara's hand stung, but she didn't pull back. I have been hurt, she said, voice low and fierce. Beaten, terrorized, nearly strangled to death by a man who promised to protect me. But I survived. I chose to run. I chose to stay when I found you. And I choose this, whatever this is, with my eyes wide open. Luke touched his reddened cheek, something shifting in his expression. Clara, I'm not Maria. I'm not Thomas. I'm not some innocent you need to protect from the big bad world. Her voice broke slightly. I'm just as damaged as you are, just as wanted by those who'd call themselves law-abiding. So stop trying to save me from you and let me decide for myself. The fire crackled between them. Then Luke moved, crossing the space in 2 strides, pulling her against him. The kiss was different from their others. Desperate, almost angry, full of fear and need, and the terrible understanding that they were both drowning and clinging to each other might save or damn them both. When they broke apart, Clara was crying, Tears she hadn't shed for Samuel, for her old life, for all the ways the world had broken them both. Luke held her, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I'm scared," he admitted against her hair. "Scared of losing you, scared of what loving you means." "Then be scared," Clara whispered, "but be scared with me, not for me." They made their way inside, to the bed they'd shared since the storm. This time, there was a different urgency to their touching, a need to affirm life in the face of death, connection in the face of isolation. They came together like survivors of a shipwreck, grateful and desperate and achingly tender. Afterward, they lay entwined, sweat cooling on their skin. Luke traced patterns on Clara's bare shoulder, and she could feel him thinking. "What is it?" she asked. "The men who saw me. They'll come looking, maybe not tomorrow or next week, but eventually. This place isn't as hidden as I thought." Clara had known this was coming. "So we leave." "We?" She lifted up to look at him. "Did you think I'd stay here alone? Or go back to being the Black Widow of perdition? I can't ask you to run with me. You're not asking, I'm telling." She settled back against him. "Besides, I've always wanted to see Mexico." Luke was quiet for a long moment. "It won't be easy. The desert between here and the border is harsh. And there are bandits. Apache raiding parties. Worse. And staying here is safe." "Point taken." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "We'll need supplies. I'll have to go to the trading post at Coyote Wells, get ammunition, food that travels well." "It's risky, but—" "We'll go together." "No, it's too dangerous. If someone recognizes you, then we'll deal with it together." Clara's tone brooked no argument. "I'm done with being left behind for my own good." Luke sighed, recognizing a battle lost. "You're stubborn as a mule, you know that. Good thing. I'll need to be traveling with you." They began planning the next morning, spreading Luke's worn maps on the table. The route to Mexico was treacherous. Days of open desert, mountain passes, dried riverbeds that could flood without warning. But there were old trails, hidden springs Luke had learned about in his freighting days. "There's a mission here." He pointed to a spot 3 days' ride south. "Abandoned for years, but the well still works. We could rest there, then push for the border." Clara studied the map, memorizing landmarks. "What about after, in Mexico?" "I speak the language, know people from the old days. We could disappear into the mountains, maybe find work on a ranch or in a mining town. Start over with new names, new lives, together." Together. The word still seemed to surprise him, but he was learning to say it with something like hope. They had 3 days of peace, preparing for their journey. 3 days of working side by side, of stolen kisses and shared plans. 3 days before the world found them again. Clara was drawing water from the well when she saw the dust cloud on the horizon. Her heart sank as she recognized what it meant. Riders, moving fast. "Luke!" She ran for the house, finding him cleaning his rifle. "Someone's coming!" He was at the window in an instant, watching the approaching riders. His face went grim. 3 men, coming from the north. The ones who saw you? Maybe, or bounty hunters who got word. He checked his ammunition. Movements efficient. "Get your gun. If this goes bad, we face it together," Clara finished, loading her pistol with steady hands. Luke looked at her, this woman who'd chosen to stand with him against whatever came, and something fierce and protective blazed in his eyes. Together, then. The riders were getting closer, their purpose clear in their direct approach. There would be no more running, no more hiding. Whatever came next, they would meet it as they'd learned to meet everything else, side by side. 2 damaged souls who'd found strength in their shared brokenness. Clara took position at the window, gun ready. "Luke? Yeah? Whatever happens, I'm glad I found you." His hand found hers briefly. "Best thing that ever happened to me was finding you half dead in that canyon." "Romantic as always," she said, managing a smile despite the danger approaching. "I'll work on it, after we survive this." The riders were close enough now to make out details. Hard men with harder faces. The kind who made their living hunting other men. Clara's finger found the trigger, steady despite the fear coursing through her. Together. Then, whatever came next, the lead rider dismounted 50 feet from the house, his hands visible but ready. He was a lean man with sun-weathered skin and cold blue eyes that missed nothing. The star pinned to his vest caught the morning light. Not a sheriff, but a licensed bounty hunter with legal authority to bring in fugitives dead or alive. Luke Cordero. His voice carried across the desert air. "I'm Jake Thornton, territorial bounty hunter. Got paper on you from Tucson. Come out peaceful-like and this don't have to get ugly." Luke stood away from the window but kept his rifle ready. "And if I don't, then we burn you out. Simple as that." Thornton's companions spread out, flanking the house. "Ain't personal, Cordero, just business." Clara moved to the back window, watching the riders take position. Her mind raced through their options, few and getting fewer. Then an idea struck, dangerous, possibly foolish, but maybe their only chance. "Let me go out," she whispered. "Like hell. Trust me." She set down her pistol, smoothing her hair and dress. "I've got a plan." Before Luke could stop her, Clara opened the door and stepped onto the porch, hands raised. She'd shifted her entire bearing, no longer the confident woman who'd learned to survive the desert, but someone fragile, frightened. "Please," her voice trembled with well-feigned hysteria. "Please don't shoot. He's got me prisoner." Thornton's hand went to his gun. "Ma'am, my name is—" Clara let tears fall, a skill learned from years of making excuses for bruises. "Mrs. Samuel Whitmore, from Perdition. This man kidnapped me weeks ago. He's been keeping me here." She collapsed against the door frame, sobbing. "Clara, what are you—" Luke started forward, playing perfectly into her ruse. "Stay back!" Clara shrieked, cowering. "Haven't you done enough?" Thornton looked uncertain now. This complicated things. A hostage meant paperwork, witnesses, explanations to territorial authorities. "Mrs. Whitmore, you say? The deputy's widow?" "Yes." Clara stumbled down the porch steps, staying between the men and Luke. "My husband died, and this monster took me when I was grieving. Alone. That's not—" Luke appeared in the doorway, rifle lowered in confusion. "Don't let him fool you." Clara moved closer to Thornton, who automatically shifted to keep her behind him, protected. It put his gun hand away from his weapon. His attention divided. He's silver-tongued as the devil himself. Made me say things, do things. "Now, ma'am, just calm down," Thornton said, still processing this development. "You're safe now." Clara stumbled, falling against him. As Thornton reached to steady her, she grabbed for his gun. They struggled, but surprise gave her the advantage. The weapon came free just as Luke burst from the house. "Nobody move!" Clara had Thornton's own gun pressed to his temple, her tears gone, replaced by steel. "Tell your men to drop their weapons. You little— I'm the Black Widow of Perdition. Mr. Thornton. I killed my husband in cold blood, or so they say. You really want to test what I'll do to a stranger?" She cocked the hammer for emphasis. Thornton went very still. "Boys, put him down." The other two riders complied, confusion evident on their faces. Luke collected their weapons, never taking his eyes off Clara. She looked magnificent, fierce and clever and utterly in control. "Now," Clara continued conversationally, "here's what's going to happen. You're going to get on your horses and ride back the way you came. You're going to forget you found this place." "Can't do that, ma'am. I got a job. Your job just got complicated." Clara's voice hardened. "See, I really am Clara Whitmore, and I really am wanted for questioning in my husband's death. But I wasn't kidnapped. I'm here by choice. So you can try to take us both in. Maybe get yourself and your men killed in the process. For a bounty that'll get tied up in legal proceedings for years. Or you can ride away and look for easier prey." Thornton's jaw worked. "The Harrison family paid good money. The Harrison family." Luke stepped forward, rage flashing across his features. They mention how their boy tried to force himself on an innocent girl, how he pulled a knife when I stopped him. No, I bet they left those parts out. Ain't my job to judge guilt or innocence. No, Clara agreed. But it is your job to stay alive, and I promise you, Mr. Thornton, try to take this man and you'll see just how much truth there is to my reputation. The standoff stretched taut. Then one of the other riders spoke up. Jake, maybe we should reconsider. 2 fugitives means twice the trouble, and if she's telling true about being here willing... Shut up, Moss. But Thornton was calculating odds, seeing the determination in both their faces. You can't run forever. Someone else will come. Maybe, Luke said. But it won't be today. And it won't be you. Slowly, carefully. Thornton nodded. We're leaving, but this ain't over. It never is. Clara replied. They watched the bounty hunters mount up and ride away, weapons trained until the dust cloud disappeared over the horizon. Only then did Clara lower the gun, her hands beginning to shake. That was... Luke pulled her against him. Brilliant. Terrifying. But brilliant. I hated it. Clara buried her face in his chest. Playing victim again, even as a ruse, but I knew it would throw them off balance. You saved us. For now. She pulled back, meeting his eyes. But he was right. Others will come. We can't wait any longer. They packed through the night, taking only essentials. Luke's maps, weapons, ammunition, Clara's medical supplies, food that would survive desert travel, blankets, canvas for shelter, every canteen they could fill. The rest they left, the small comforts that had made the adobe house a temporary home. As dawn broke, they loaded Luke's horse and the pack mule he'd been keeping for this eventuality. Clara looked back at the little house, the place where she'd healed in body and spirit, where she'd found something she hadn't dared hope for. Regrets? Luke asked, securing the last pack. No. She turned away, facing south toward the unknown. Just gratitude. They set out as the sun climbed, casting long shadows across the desert floor. Luke led, picking a path through terrain he'd scouted over years of hiding. Clara rode behind, alert for pursuit, the borrowed horse steady beneath her. The first day was brutal. The October sun still carried summer's heat, and the landscape offered little shade. They rested during the worst of it, sheltering beneath a rocky overhang, sharing water sparingly. Tell me about Mexico, Clara said, trying to distract herself from the heat. It's different from here, older. The mountains have villages that have been there since before the conquistadors. People who mind their own business if you mind yours. Luke traced patterns in the dust. My mother came from a place like that. Said it was hard living but honest. Sounds perfect. Don't romanticize it. We'll be outsiders, gringos, even with my blood and language. It'll be work to fit in, to build trust. I'm not afraid of work. Clara leaned against him, despite the heat. I'm afraid of staying still, of being trapped again. They pushed on as evening cooled the air, making good time across a stretch of relatively flat ground. But as full darkness fell, Luke called a halt. Can't risk the horses in this terrain at night. We'll camp here, move again before dawn. They made a cold camp, no fire to betray their position. Dinner was dried meat and hard biscuit, washed down with warm water that tasted of metal canteens. The stars emerged in brilliant display, the Milky Way a river of light across the heavens. Samuel hated the stars, Clara said suddenly. Said they made him feel small, insignificant. He preferred towns, buildings, places where he could be important. And you, they make me feel free. All that space, all those possibilities. She found Luke's hand in the darkness. When things were bad, I'd sneak outside and look up. Imagine I could just float away into all that vastness. My mother used to say each star was a soul watching over us. Thomas and I would try to count them, see who was looking down. His voice carried old warmth. Never could decide if that was comforting or terrifying. Both. Maybe. They slept in shifts, one always watching for pursuit or danger. Clara woke once to find Luke sitting guard, silhouetted against the stars. The sight filled her with a fierce protectiveness. Whatever came, she'd fight for this man who'd shown her tenderness could exist without possession, strength without cruelty. The second day brought new challenges. They entered rougher country, ancient lava flows creating a maze of black rock that trapped heat like an oven. The horses picked their way carefully, and progress slowed to a crawl. By afternoon, Clara noticed Luke favoring his side, the wound from the bounty hunters not fully healed. "We need to stop. Let me check your bandages. We can't afford to have you collapse from infection either." Her tone brooked no argument. They found shade in a shallow cave, really just a depression in the rock face. Clara unwrapped the bandage, frowning at the inflammation around the wound. "Why didn't you say it was bothering you?" "We had bigger concerns." She cleaned the wound with their precious water, applied a poultice from her supplies. "You have to tell me these things. I can't help if I don't know." "Old habits," Luke admitted. "Been taking care of myself for so long. I forget I don't have to anymore." "Well, remember?" She rewrapped the wound with fresh cloth. "We're partners now. That means sharing the bad along with the good." That night they reached the abandoned mission Luke had mentioned. It rose from the desert like a ghost, adobe walls crumbling but still standing, empty windows staring blindly at the stars. The well was there as promised, the water brackish but drinkable. They sheltered in what had been the chapel, their bedrolls spread where congregants once knelt. Faded saints watched from the walls, their painted eyes full of judgment or mercy depending on the light. "Tomorrow we reach the real desert," Luke warned. 2 days of nothing but sand and sun between here and the next water. It'll be the hardest part. "We'll make it," Clara said with more confidence than she felt. But as she settled against him for sleep, she heard it, distant but unmistakable. Horses, many of them, moving fast despite the darkness, driven by purpose or desperation. Luke heard it too, his body tensed, hand reaching for his rifle. Could be anyone, traders, travelers, or Thornton, who decided the money was worth the risk after all. They lay still, listening as the sound grew closer. Clara counted heartbeats, measured breath, wondered if their journey would end before it truly began. The mission that had sheltered countless souls might witness one more drama, two lovers making a last stand among the ruins of faith. The hoofbeats passed, heading east rather than south, not following their trail. Then, this time, "We leave before dawn," Luke decided. "No more stopping until we clear the desert." Clara nodded against his shoulder. Somewhere out there, Mexico waited with its promises and perils. Between here and there lay miles of killing ground, where water was life and mercy was as rare as rain. But they'd come this far against all odds. Two damaged souls who'd found each other in the wilderness, who'd chosen love over safety, hope over resignation. Tomorrow would bring its trials, but tonight they had shelter, water, and each other. It would have to be enough to sustain them through whatever came next. The fever struck on the second day out from the mission, just as they entered the worst stretch of desert. Clara had been fighting waves of dizziness since dawn, attributing them to heat and exhaustion. But when she swayed in the saddle and nearly fell, Luke knew something was terribly wrong. "Just need water," Clara mumbled, but her skin was burning hot despite the sweat soaking her clothes. Luke caught her as she slipped sideways, lowering her carefully to the ground. His hands found the old snakebite wound on her leg, now angry red and swollen with infection. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was tight with fear. "Didn't want to slow us down." Her eyes were glazed, unfocused. So close to freedom. Luke looked around desperately. They were in the middle of nothing, sand and scrub brush stretching endlessly in all directions. The nearest water was a day's ride ahead at Shepherd's Rest, an old stage stop. Going back to the mission would take just as long. He made his decision quickly, using his knife. He cut branches from a nearby palo verde tree, lashing them together with rope to create a crude travois. The horses would hate pulling it, but it would keep Clara off the burning sand. "No," Clara protested weakly as he lifted her. "Leave me. You can make it." "Don't!" His voice was sharp with pain. "Don't you dare tell me to leave you." He secured her to the travois, padding it with their blankets. She drifted in and out of consciousness as they pressed on, Luke pushing the horses harder than was safe. The sun climbed mercilessly, turning the world into a shimmering hell of heat waves and mirages. By afternoon, their water was running dangerously low. Luke rationed it carefully, giving most to Clara, who burned with fever despite the desert heat. He talked to her constantly, needing her to stay with him. "Remember that spring behind the house? When we get to Mexico, we'll find another one just like it. Build a place nearby. You can have a garden, grow those herbs you're always talking about." Clara's response was lost in delirium. She spoke Samuel's name, then her father's, reliving old traumas in her fever dreams. Once she cried out, begging someone to stop hurting her. Luke's jaw clenched, wishing Samuel Whitmore was alive so he could kill him properly. Night brought blessed coolness but new dangers. Coyotes followed them, drawn by the scent of weakness. Luke fired warning shots to keep them at bay, using ammunition they couldn't spare. Clara shivered now, the fever breaking and reforming in waves that left her drenched and trembling. "Luke?" Her voice was thin as paper. "I'm here." He walked beside the travois, holding her hand. "I'm sorry. Should have been more careful. Save your strength. If I don't make it..." "You'll make it?" He squeezed her fingers. "You're too stubborn to die on me now." She managed a weak smile. "Learned from the best." Dawn revealed Shepherd's Rest in the distance, a cluster of adobe buildings around a well. Luke's relief was short-lived when he saw horses already there, 3 of them, with riders nowhere in sight. He approached cautiously, rifle ready. The buildings seemed deserted, but instinct screamed danger. Still, Clara needed water and shelter. He had no choice. "Hello, the station," he called. A woman emerged from the main building, native, older, with gray-streaked hair and knowing eyes. She took in Luke's exhaustion, the travois, Clara's condition. "Bring her," she said simply. "Quickly." Luke hesitated. "Those horses, traders, gone to the trading post south. I watch their goods." She was already moving toward them. "Your woman is dying. You want to talk or save her?" Inside, the woman, who introduced herself as Maria Santos, went to work with practiced efficiency. She examined the infected wound, clicking her tongue at what she found. "Snakebite, yes? Old one, badly healed. The poison is still there, deep." She began pulling items from her medicine bag. "You're lucky, another day." "Can you help her?" "Maybe, if she's strong, if the spirits will it." Maria began grinding herbs, mixing them with water from the well. "You must hold her. This will hurt." What followed was the longest hours of Luke's life. Maria reopened the wound, draining the infection, applying poultices that made Clara scream despite her weakness. He held her through it all, whispering promises and prayers in English and Spanish, begging her to fight. Sometime during the night, 3 men returned, the traders Maria had mentioned. They were rough-looking characters who eyed Luke with professional interest, noting his guns, his wariness, but Maria said something sharp and Apache, and they kept their distance. "She knows things," one muttered to Luke in passing. "Things about a man's future. Best not to cross her." Clara's fever finally broke near dawn. She slept naturally now, her breathing easier. Maria nodded approval. "She will live, but she needs rest. 3 days, maybe 4. We can't stay that long." Luke glanced toward the door. "People are looking for us. People are always looking for someone." Maria's eyes were knowing. "You think you're the first to run through here? This place has seen many who need to disappear." She was right. Luke realized. Shepherd's Rest was perfectly positioned, close enough to the border to attract those seeking new lives. far enough from civilization to avoid official attention, a way station for the desperate and determined. Over the next 2 days, as Clara slowly recovered, Luke learned more about their savior. Maria had been married to a Mexican trader, lived between worlds. When he died, she stayed at the rest station, serving as unofficial healer and keeper of secrets for those passing through. "Your woman," she said one evening, watching Clara sleep. "She carries old pain, but also new strength. The desert has claimed her." "What do you mean?" "Some people the desert kills. Others, it transforms, burns away what is weak, leaves what is essential." Maria smiled. "She is becoming who she was meant to be." On the 3rd day, Clara was able to sit up, even walk a little. The infection had drained her, left her thin and pale, but her eyes were clear. Luke told her about Maria, about the delay, about his fears. "You should have left me," she said, but without conviction. "We've had this conversation. Answers still no." Clara touched his face, traced the new lines worry had carved there. "I love you. I should have said it before, but I was afraid. Afraid of what the words meant, what they'd cost. And now I know they're all we really have." She leaned into him. "I love you, Luke Cordero, whatever that brings. It brings Mexico," he said, throat tight. "And a life together, if we can make it past the next 100 miles. Maria interrupted. "Carrying a package for your journey." Inside were medical supplies, dried food, a hand-drawn map. "This shows the quiet routes, where to find water, which settlements ask no questions. We can't pay, then repay by living well, by being kind to the next desperate souls you meet." She pressed something else into Clara's hands, a small silver medallion. "For protection, the Virgin watches over travelers." They left that night. Clara well enough to ride, though still weak. Maria had given them information worth more than gold. Which officials could be bribed at the border. Which towns had doctors who wouldn't ask questions. Where a couple could disappear into the mountain villages. "She saved us," Clara said, as Shepherd's Rest disappeared behind them. "You saved yourself," Luke corrected, "by being strong enough to fight." They rode through the night, the border drawing ever closer. Behind them lay everything they'd known, Luke's 6 years of exile. Clara's lifetime of trying to fit expectations that nearly killed her. Ahead waited uncertainty, but also possibility. Just before dawn, they stopped at a rise overlooking a valley. In the distance, marked by a line of cottonwoods, ran the Rio Grande. Beyond it, Mexico. "Are you ready?" Luke asked. Clara thought of all she'd endured. Samuel's cruelty, the town's judgment, the desert's trials. She thought of Luke finding her near death, of the careful trust they'd built, of the love that had grown in the most unlikely ground. "I've been ready my whole life," she said. "I just didn't know it." They descended toward the river as the sun rose, painting the landscape in shades of gold and promise. Soon they would cross that flowing boundary between old lives and new. Clara's fever had burned away the last of her fears, leaving only determination and hope. Luke reached over, taking her hand as they rode, no words needed, just the simple contact that said everything. They would cross together, as they'd learned to do everything. Two souls who'd found each other in the wilderness, ready to build something new from the ashes of their pasts. The river sang its ancient song of borders crossed and chances taken. Soon they would add their story to its flow, another chapter in the endless tale of those who chose the unknown over the unbearable, who gambled everything on the possibility of freedom. But first, one more mile through the thinning darkness, one more mile with danger at their backs and hope pulling them forward, one more mile together, toward whatever waited on the other side. The journey back to perdition took 3 days of hard riding. Clara's heart grew heavier with each familiar landmark. The red rock formations where she'd once picnicked with other sheriffs' wives, the twisted juniper that marked the halfway point, the distant peaks that cradled the town like accusing fingers. "We could still turn back," Luke said on their last night camped under the stars. Clara shook her head. Running forever isn't living. We both know that. They entered town at midday, when the streets would be fullest. Clara wore her best remaining dress, her head high despite the whispers that followed their passage. Luke rode beside her, tension in every line of his body, but his hand steady near his gun. Sheriff Morrison was waiting at the jail, having been alerted by the commotion. His eyes widened at seeing them together. Mrs. Whitmore, Cordero. He stood slowly. "This is unexpected. We've come to settle things properly," Clara said. "Both of us." Within an hour, word had spread through Perdition like wildfire. The Black Widow had returned, and with her the Mexican killer from Tucson. The jail was soon surrounded by curious townspeople, their voices a rising tide of speculation and judgment. Morrison cleared the immediate area, then faced them across his desk. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Maybe both," Luke admitted. "But Clara deserves to clear her name, and I'm tired of running from a lie. The Tucson charges were based on false testimony." Clara placed a worn envelope on the desk. "We stopped in Tucson on our way here, found someone who was willing to tell the truth after all these years." Morrison opened the envelope, scanning the affidavit inside. His eyebrows rose. "This is from Maria Delgado. She's been missing since the night Harrison's son attacked her," Luke finished. "She didn't take her own life like they said. She ran, just like I did. But she's ready to speak now." The sheriff studied them both. "This could change things for you, Cordero, but Mrs. Whitmore, your situation. I killed my husband." Clara's voice rang clear in the small office. "I won't deny that, but I ask you, Sheriff, is it murder when a woman defends herself against a man who's strangling her? When she's covered in bruises from years of his love? When he's promised to kill her for the crime of wanting to leave?" Morrison's jaw tightened. He'd suspected as much, but hearing it stated so plainly was different. "You'd need witnesses, evidence. Then let's have a proper hearing." Clara challenged, "Let the truth come out, all of it." The hearing was set for the following week. Clara and Luke were placed under house arrest in the small boarding house run by Mrs. Chen, the one person in town who welcomed them without judgment. "You gave me map," Mary said simply when asked why. "I give you shelter, balance." The week passed in a blur of preparation. Word of the hearing spread beyond Perdition, drawing curiosity seekers and journalists. The territorial judge arrived, a stern man named Garrett who was known for both fairness and intolerance of nonsense. The courthouse was packed the morning of the hearing. Clara sat beside Luke at the defendant's table, aware of every stare, every whisper. Margaret Whitmore occupied the front row, her face a mask of righteous fury. Judge Garrett called the proceedings to order. "We're here to examine the circumstances surrounding two deaths, that of Deputy Samuel Whitmore and that of Peter Harrison. Let's start with Mrs. Whitmore." The prosecutor, brought in from the territorial capital, stood. "The people contend that Clara Whitmore poisoned her husband in cold blood, then fled to avoid justice." "Objection," said their lawyer. "A young man named David Porter, who'd taken the case for the notoriety. There's no evidence of poisoning." "Sustained, prosecutor. Stick to facts, not speculation." The first witness was Dr. Ephraim Mills, who'd examined Samuel's body. The cause of death was heart failure. He testified. "No signs of poison, but heart failure can be induced." The prosecutor pressed. "Many things can induce heart failure, including extreme physical exertion or emotional stress." The doctor's eyes flicked to Clara. "Or violence." "So," Margaret Whitmore testified next, her voice dripping venom as she described the unnatural marriage, Clara's unwifely behavior, the arguments neighbors overheard. Then Porter called his first witness, Mrs. Ellen Murphy, the seamstress. "I altered Mrs. Whitmore's dresses many times," she said quietly, always letting them out to hide bruises. "She'd make excuses, fell from a horse, walked into a door, but I knew, we all knew." "Objection," the prosecutor stood. "Speculation. I'll allow it," Judge Garrett ruled, Continue. One by one, witnesses came forward. The grocer who'd seen Clara with black eyes, the stable boy who'd watched Samuel backhand her for speaking out of turn. Even Tom Morrison testified, admitting he'd had suspicions about Samuel's treatment of his wife. "Why didn't you act?" Porter asked. Morrison's shame was evident. He was a fellow lawman, a respected man. I told myself it wasn't my business. Finally, Clara took the stand herself. The courtroom fell silent as she spoke, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Samuel Whitmore was two men. In public, he was charming, dedicated, everything a deputy should be. In private, she paused, gathering strength. In private, he was a monster who used his fists to enforce his will, who took pleasure in my pain, who threatened to kill me if I ever tried to leave. Yet you stayed. The prosecutor noted. Where would I go? Who would believe me? You've seen how this town reacted, even now, with witnesses speaking up. Some of you doubt. Imagine if I'd accused him while he lived. Tell us about the night he died. Clara's knuckles whitened as she gripped the rail. I'd written to a cousin in California, inquiring about opportunities there. Samuel found the letters. He flew into a rage, accused me of planning to abandon him, to humiliate him. He grabbed me by the throat, slammed me against the kitchen wall. Said he'd kill me before he'd let me leave. Make it look like an accident. He'd done it before. He said no one would question a grieving widower. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Margaret Whitmore surged to her feet. Lies, all lies. Order. Judge Garrett banged his gavel. Continue, Mrs. Whitmore. He was squeezing tighter. I couldn't breathe. I clawed at his hands, tried to knee him, anything to break free. Then suddenly he gasped. His eyes went wide. His grip loosened and he collapsed. The doctor said his heart gave out. Convenient, the prosecutor said. Convenient. Clara's composure cracked. You think watching a man die, even one who tormented you, is convenient? You think running into the desert alone, being hunted like an animal, nearly dying from snakebite is convenient? I fled because I knew exactly what would happen. This, all of you deciding I must be guilty because it's easier than admitting you looked the other way while Samuel Whitmore beat his wife. The courtroom erupted. Judge Garrett restored order with difficulty, then called a recess. When they reconvened, it was Luke's turn. Maria Delgado had arrived, heavily veiled but determined. She told her story in a clear voice, how Peter Harrison had cornered her, tried to force himself on her, how Luke had intervened, how Peter pulled a knife and Luke defended them both. I ran that night, she admitted. Too frightened to speak. The Harrisons would have destroyed my family, but I cannot let an innocent man suffer for my cowardice any longer. The Harrison family lawyer tried to discredit her, but Maria held firm. Other witnesses came forward, men who'd worked with Luke, who testified to his character. The portrait that emerged was of a man who'd been railroaded by wealth and influence. In his closing statement, Porter connected the two cases. We have before us two people who acted in defense, one of another, one of herself. Both were condemned not for what they did, but for who they were. A Mexican man who dared stand up to Anglo power, a woman who refused to quietly accept abuse. The real crime here is not theirs, but ours. A society that protects the powerful while persecuting their victims. Judge Garrett retired to consider. The town held its breath. When he returned, his expression was grave. In the matter of Luke Cordero, based on new testimony, I find the original charges should be dismissed. Self-defense is not murder. Relief flooded Luke's face, but the judge wasn't finished. In the matter of Clara Whitmore, the evidence suggests Deputy Whitmore died of natural causes while committing assault. While fleeing was ill-advised, it's understandable given the circumstances. No charges will be filed. The crowd exploded again, some in outrage, others in approval. Margaret Whitmore stormed out, followed by Samuel's supporters, but others remained, looking at Clara with new eyes. Some even nodded respectfully. Outside the courthouse, Clara and Luke stood in the afternoon sun, free but exhausted. What now? Morrison approached them. You're both cleared, but this town has nothing for us. Clara said, "We came back for justice, not forgiveness." Mary Chen appeared with their packed belonging. "Thought you might need these." As they prepared to leave, others approached. Ellen Murphy pressed money into Clara's hands. "For your journey." "Doctor." Mills offered medical supplies. Even some who'd condemned her now looked ashamed. "You've given them something to think about," Porter said, shaking their hands. "It might not change everything overnight, but it's a start." As they rode out of perdition for the last time, Clara looked back once. The town looked smaller somehow, less imposing. The ghosts that had haunted her were laid to rest, replaced by a different kind of peace. "Regrets?" Luke asked. "No. We did what we came to do, told the truth." "Made them listen." She turned forward, toward the horizon. "Now we can really begin." Luke reached over, taking her hand. "Together? Together." They rode south, toward the new life they'd postponed for justice, behind them. Perdition wrestled with uncomfortable truths. Some would learn from them. Others would cling to comfortable lies. But Clara and Luke were done caring about the judgment of those who'd failed them. The desert welcomed them back, vast and honest. This time, they weren't fleeing but choosing. The difference mattered more than any verdict could. The Rio Grande stretched before them, its waters running brown and swift with autumn rains. They crossed at a shallow ford Luke remembered from his freighting days, the horses picking their way carefully across the shifting riverbed. When they emerged on the southern bank, Clara felt something shift inside her, not just crossing a border, but leaving one life for another. Mexico revealed itself in layers. First the harsh borderlands, little different from the Arizona desert they'd left. Then gradually, as they climbed into the Sierra Madre foothills, the landscape softened. Pine forests replaced sagebrush. Adobe villages nestled in valleys where streams ran clear and cold. They stopped in a mountain town called San Miguel, where Luke's mother had distant cousins. The people were wary at first. Gringos were usually trouble. But Luke's fluent Spanish and respectful manner slowly won acceptance. Clara's healing skills broke down the final barriers when she saved a child from fever. La curandera rubia, they called her, the blonde healer. They found an abandoned cottage on the town's edge, its adobe walls solid despite years of neglect. Working together, they made it livable, patching the roof, cleaning the well, planting a garden. Luke found work at the local blacksmith shop, his hands remembering skills from his youth. Clara established herself as a midwife and herbalist, filling a need in the isolated community. Months passed in peaceful rhythm. They learned the patterns of mountain life, when the rains came, which plants bloomed in what season, how to read weather in the flight of birds. They attended festivals and funerals, becoming part of the town's fabric. One evening, as they sat watching sunset paint the mountains purple and gold, Clara asked the question that had haunted her. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life? You're cleared now. You could go back, reclaim your name." Luke pulled her closer. "My name means nothing without you. Besides, I like who I've become here. Lucas Herrero, the blacksmith with the beautiful wife who knows medicine." "Wife," Clara repeated softly. They'd had no official ceremony. Their past names were too dangerous to put on documents, but the town considered them married, and that was enough. "Does it bother you, not having papers?" Clara laughed. "Papers didn't make my first marriage real. Love does that. Trust, choosing each other every day." "Then choose me again," Luke said, turning to face her. "Here, now, be my wife in every way that matters." Under the vast Mexican sky, they spoke vows only they would hear. Promises not of possession but partnership, of facing whatever came as they'd learned to face everything together. A year passed, then two. Their Spanish improved, their garden flourished. Clara delivered babies and set bones, gaining reputation as a skilled healer. Luke crafted everything from horseshoes to decorative ironwork, his pieces sought after throughout the region. Sometimes past shadows intruded. Clara would wake from nightmares of Samuel's hands around her throat. Luke would tense when strangers asked too many questions. But these moments grew rarer, overwhelmed by new memories of peace. One spring morning, Clara realized she'd missed her monthly time. The knowledge filled her with equal parts joy and terror. That evening, she told Luke, his reaction was everything she'd hoped. Wonder, fear, fierce protectiveness, and joy that lit his face like sunrise. A child, he breathed. Our child. Are we ready for this? Were we ready for any of it? He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. We'll learn, like we've learned everything else. The pregnancy progressed well, the mountain women sharing their wisdom with Clara. She continued working until her belly made bending difficult, then taught younger women her skills. Their daughter arrived during a summer storm, as if even in birth she was determined to make an entrance. Clara labored through the night with Luke beside her, the midwife she'd trained attending. When the baby's cries joined the thunder, they wept together, for joy, for the miracle of new life after so much death. They named her Esperanza, Hope. She had Luke's dark hair, but Clara's bright eyes, a combination that marked her as bridge between worlds. The town celebrated her birth with music and feast, welcoming this child of the desert wanderers who'd become their own. Watching Luke hold their daughter, infinitely gentle despite his smith-hardened hands, Clara felt her heart might burst. This was what they'd risked everything for. Not just survival, but life. Full, rich, complicated life. Years flowed like the mountain streams. Esperanza grew strong and wild, equally comfortable in Spanish and English, learning herbs from her mother and metalwork from her father. 2 sons followed. Thomas, named for Luke's brother, and Gabriel, who arrived so quickly Clara barely made it to bed. They built their life carefully, but completely. The cottage expanded. The forge grew. Clara established a proper clinic, training local women as nurses. They were known now not as the mysterious gringos, but as Don Lucas and Doña Clara, respected members of the community. Sometimes travelers brought news from the north. Perdition had declined after a mine played out. Margaret Whitmore died bitter and alone. Sheriff Morrison wrote once, forwarded through many hands, saying simply, "You were right to leave. Be happy." They were. Not that life was without challenges. Drought years when crops failed, sickness that swept through the village, bandits who occasionally troubled the mountain passes. But they faced each trial as they'd learned to face everything, together, with determination born of surviving worse. One evening, as they celebrated Esperanza's quinceañera, Clara stood watching their family and friends dancing in the plaza. Luke appeared beside her, still lean and strong despite the gray threading his hair. "Regrets?" he asked, echoing that long-ago question. Clara looked at their daughter, radiant in her festive dress, whirling between 2 worlds with perfect grace, at their sons, playing guitars with the local boys, at the town that had become home, the life they'd built from ashes. "Never," she said, "not for a single moment. Even the hard parts, the running, the fear, especially those, they brought us here." She turned to him. "That night you asked if I feared you or desired you. Do you remember?" "Every word." "I know the answer now. Both. I feared the power you had to change everything I thought I knew, and I desired that change with all my heart." She touched his face, tracing lines carved by sun and laughter. "I still do." Luke kissed her as the music swelled. There in the plaza where everyone could see. No hiding now, no shame. Just 2 people who'd found each other in the wilderness and chosen to build something beautiful from the ruins of their pasts. Later, as the celebration continued under stars, old Maria from Shepherd's Rest appeared. She'd traveled far for this occasion, bringing blessings and desert sage. "You survived," she said simply. "Not just the desert, the harder journey." "What journey?" Clara asked. "Learning to live after surviving. Many never do. They stay in the desert inside, even when their bodies find safety." Maria smiled. "But you bloomed where you were planted, both of you." As dawn approached and the party finally wound down, the family walked home together. Esperanza chattered about the boys who'd asked to dance. Thomas carried a sleeping Gabriel. Luke and Clara followed, hands linked, watching their children with wonder. "What are you thinking?" Luke asked. Clara considered, thinking of two desperate souls fleeing across the desert, of a question asked in darkness. "Do you fear me or desire me?" Of all the miles and years between then and now. "I'm thinking," she said finally, "that the desert gave us its greatest gift." "What's that?" "It burned away everything false, everything that wasn't essential, left only what mattered." She squeezed his hand. "Each other, and the courage to build this." She gestured to their children, their home, their life. Not perfect, but real. Not without scars, but healing. Not the life either had planned, but the one they'd chosen with every sunrise, every challenge, every small act of love. They reached their gate as the sun began painting the mountains. Esperanza turned back, her face glowing with youth and possibility. "Mama, Papa, thank you for tonight, for everything." Clara and Luke exchanged glances, remembering another dawn, another gate, when they'd fled perdition with nothing but hope. Now their daughter stood before them, living proof that love could conquer fear, that two broken people could create something whole. "Thank you, Mia," Clara said softly, "for being our hope." As they entered their home, Luke paused, pulling Clara close one more time. "You asked once what I was afraid of. Want to know? Tell me that I'll wake up and this will all be a dream, that I'm still alone in that adobe house, and you never came." Clara kissed him softly. "Then I'll just have to keep reminding you it's real. Every day. Every day." Inside, their children prepared for bed, filling the house with laughter and life. Outside, San Miguel woke to a new morning, the mountains standing eternal guard, and in between, two souls who'd found each other in the wilderness continued their greatest adventure, living, loving, and facing whatever came next. Together, always together. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect with fellow Western romance fans around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel for more tales of love and adventure in the American frontier. What did you think of Clara and Luke's journey? Share your thoughts below.